Mora conducts physician-led support groups, helping people live healthier, happier lives, free from chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. And on our podcast, Health and Mora with Dr. Lori Marbus, we bring to you nutrition and lifestyle medicine experts and extraordinary guests to empower and inspire you with their knowledge and stories of plant-based lifestyle so that you can be your healthiest self.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Marbus, and I'm super excited to really have you guys listen and learn from someone who's doing a lot of amazing things. Dr. Melissa Sundermann, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Lori. So excited to be here with you today.
Well, you're quite an achiever, so I really can't wait for people to learn, one, just how you got into lifestyle medicine and all that good stuff, but also just the incredible endurance activities that you do. You're a mom, you're a doctor, so let's just dive in. So let's learn a little bit about Dr. Sundermann. How did you decide to become a doctor? That's kind of always an interesting story.
Okay, well, I will definitely tell that story, but I first off want to say that I am just tickled to be here with you today, Lori, because I have been listening to your podcast for years. And even, as I first got board certified in lifestyle medicine, and we'll go through that story, I discovered your podcast and I just fell in love with just how sweet and intelligent and kind and I learned so much for your podcast. So I think it's just awesome that I'm here today. So with that being said, what's my pathway? So
yeah,
I didn't have any doctors, even nurses in my family, but at an early age, I just had this interest that I was interested in medicine. I remember going to visit someone in the hospital, a sick family member, and just having this curiosity of just wanting to absorb and learn. And so from probably about age 8, I was just curious about being a doctor, even though I had great role models in my life, but they just didn't happen to be in medicine. So I took that through, high school and college. I went to the University of Michigan, majored in pre-med. And at that time, Women in Science was just beginning. In fact, I was in the original cohort of a program at the University of Michigan called Women in Science. So this is way before we had all of these kind of programming going on. And because of that, I was assigned to a lab. And so I did research in the School of Public Health at the University of Michigan and worked in the lab all 4 years. And so I thought, well, I think I want to be a doctor, but maybe I want to do research. So I took 2 years, 2 gap years, and did research and really came to the realization that I want to be a doctor. I want to work with people. I love science, but I want to be forward facing with patients. So went to Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine. So I am a DO. And for people who don't know the difference, MDs and DOs, actually at Michigan State is perfect because they have both an MD program and a DO program. We took all of the same science courses, biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, all together. But then as a DO, we were also trained in something called osteopathic manual medicine. So that's becoming more and more popular, where we really use our hands for healing. So myofascial release, and there are some more high velocity. So that's a little bit of the difference. But as a DO, I think from the get-go, we're taught that the body is an integrated system and that everything is related. And as we know with lifestyle medicine, that is what we believe as well. So I always had this feeling that that's a direction I wanted to go. So I did residency in internal medicine because I wanted to develop long-term relationships with my patients. And I loved the hospital medicine, but I also loved outpatient. And so internal medicine seemed like a perfect fit. And then as the end of residency during residency is when I had my son, Blake, who's now 23. And at the very beginning of my first year of practice, I had my daughter, Paige, who's now 21. So like you, I know you have 3 kids. It was balancing being a mama and being a doctor. And back when I went to residency and everything like that, it was before they had these limited hours. And so it was working crazy 36-hour shifts and it's hard to balance sometimes, right? Where you've been on call, but my kids were babies. They had no clue of that. They still needed their mom. And fortunately, I have a very, very supportive husband to this day who really we co-parented and helped me a lot. I couldn't have done residency without him. I know you went to medical school when your kids were in
By 3
elementary
and
school.
10 months.
Yeah,
Yeah, when I started
exactly. So
medical
you
school.
needed to
Yeah.
have a co-partner as well.
Yeah.
So I wore many different hats during my early stages of my career in medicine. I was a hospitalist, so I took care of acutely ill patients in the hospital. I worked at the University of Michigan right on campus, so I took care of faculty and students and staff. I worked for large organizations such as Trinity Health. So I feel like I became very well-rounded with both inpatient and outpatient setting, which we know that they're similar but very different. And during the time that I was working at the University of Michigan, I had this interest because I think of my training as a DO that I wanted to learn, other ways of healing just besides pills and procedures. So I had the opportunity in about 2010 to do a program at the University of Michigan called a Faculty Scholars Program in Integrative Medicine. And there's a cohort of about 8 to 10 of us, and not just people in medicine. We had an art professor, we had an architecture professor, we had some nurses, and we spent every Friday for the academic year learning about complementary and alternative ways of healing. So one week we would have someone from homeopathy, another week would be traditional Chinese medicine, it might be Reiki, it might be energy healing. So what that did for me, it wasn't that I was trained how to perform acupuncture, but it really opened my eyes, my heart, that there was other ways of healing that existed far, before our traditional Western medicine. And from there, because I was so interested in that, I went on to do a professional training in mind-body medicine with James Gordon, who's one of the pioneers of mind-body medicine, along with names like John Kabat-Zinn. So with that interest, with those tools, I then would try to take that into my everyday interactions with patients. And it's not that I practiced traditional Chinese medicine, but if maybe one of my patients was saying, hey, I get acupuncture, I knew what that was about. Or, what, I went to see a naturopathic practitioner and I'm taking these kind of herbs. I knew what that was about. And so I think sometimes physicians, many professionals, if we don't know something, we tend to say, oh, don't do that. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Don't even look into that. So I at least knew, and I had met professionals and I had respect for that. So then life happens and you've got kids, and I was balancing being a mom, and my kids were super involved in their sports. My son was a big time soccer player. My daughter was a diver. So we traveled all over the country with them, which was awesome. We never traded for the world. I say I probably owned stock in Hampton hotels from all that time. And then I always knew, or I had this feeling deep in my heart that there was something more for me to do to really align my personal and professional passion and interest. And so about 2018, my kids were going off to college, so they're just a year apart. So it was like boom, boom, graduation and college, 1 year after the other. And I felt like this was time that I could really be more selfish career-wise, because I never wanted to take away from my kids, even though I did work. And I think I wanted to think I was a good role model because I worked while they're growing up. But now I could have a little bit more time. So I literally sat down at the computer, and went to Google, because Google can answer like every question, I have, and started combining words that perked my interest and perked my passion. So things that I plugged in were nature medicine, wellness medicine, probably running medicine, and up popped lifestyle medicine. And I thought, wow, what's that? So it brought me to the landing page of American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I read through the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, and it gave me chills, because it just felt like coming home of just, oh my gosh, this is exactly how I lead my life, how I want to live my life, how I want my patients to live their life. And there's other people like me out there. I felt like many times as an outlier or a unicorn in medicine, that when the next new drug came out that we could just put everyone on, I was like, but can we talk about lifestyle? And so it was wonderful. And so I decided to become board certified. I became board certified in 2019. And ever since that time, my entire life, I just feel like I've had a wonderful life all along, but this aligning who I am personally with my profession has just been just a godsend to me. So I've gotten more and more involved in lifestyle medicine, and I was part of Trinity Health, which is a very large healthcare organization. I was in the Michigan area, Ann Arbor, Michigan area. And at that time, it was great timing when I got board certified, is that they were looking to launch a lifestyle medicine division. And so I was fortunate enough to have some great mentors who had been with this group for a while, who also got board certified in lifestyle medicine. And we launched a lifestyle medicine consult service. Our group had about 1,000 providers, so physicians and PAs and nurse practitioners, so multi-specialties. So what we created was a consult group, lifestyle medicine consult service. So if someone who was not board certified in lifestyle medicine had someone with type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, they could send them to one of us for consultations. So that was really rewarding, and a lot of got experience with some leadership experience in creating a program. And we also created a lifestyle medicine interest group. And then fast forward of just feeling like this is really where I want to take my next steps in my career and in my life. I got an opportunity where I sit in my office right now, and in October 1st, I started my new position at Canyon Ranch. And for those listeners who are maybe not familiar with Canyon Ranch has been around for about 40 years, and we are a wellness resort and really integrative wellness resort. We're one of the few wellness resorts that actually have physicians on staff. So the main locations are in Tucson, Arizona, and then I'm in the Berkshire Mountains of Massachusetts, absolutely beautiful. And then we have smaller locations in Northern California, Woodside, and then also in Las Vegas, inside of the Venetian Hotel. So it's a relatively new position for me, but it feels like the universe put me here at the right time in my life. My kids are partially launched. I guess they're never really truly launched, but at 21 and 23, I feel like I can, really explore this opportunity. So that's me in a nutshell, and kind of how I sit in this chair right now.
Well, just to get into the Canyon Ranch piece, Richard Carmona, is he still involved with Canyon Ranch?
He is. He's on our board. He's not actively seeing patients, but he's out in the Tucson area. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I interviewed him 3 or 4 years ago, and I remember him talking. He was in Tucson. What an amazing story too! But he's talking about Canyon Ranch as well. So that's awesome. So now your Canyon Ranch, it's in the Boston area, correct?
It's 2 hours west of Boston.
Okay.
So in the Berkshire Mountains of Massachusetts, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's a really cultural area. So some people would maybe have heard of Tanglewood. So this is the Summer Institute where the Boston Symphony resides, and they have concerts, outdoor concerts. And then Jacob's Pillow is a dance conservatory in the summertime. So, and you would love it too. You're outdoorsy, lots of hiking and biking and skiing, and just lots of areas to play outdoors.
Cool. Wow, that's really awesome. I definitely will have to come visit when my daughter's in Boston doing residency. I'd love to just come over. Maybe we could just drive over for a couple hours. And I really want to just kind of, you kind of went over it, but the energy, how you got chills reading about lifestyle medicine. So we were just at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine conference. Can you explain the energy that was there? Because we met in person. I mean, holy moly.
Well, so when my first American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and I'll just use the abbreviation ACLM, was in 2019, and that's when I got board certified. So I had, seen people because I read their books, or maybe I listened to podcasts. So I was like literally like this fangirl where I was like, oh my gosh, there's Michael Clapper. Oh my gosh, there's Michael Greger, and so there's Lori Marbus. And since 2019 of me really getting involved and again, putting myself out there, because the universe attracts, right? And if you put yourself out there with something that you're aligned in. So our conference, the ACLM conference, was virtual in 2020, virtual in 2021, and 2022, it was live. So during that time, those 3 years, I really had made all these connections. We had met virtually before. I had met many people virtually, and you felt like, oh yeah, we kind of know each other because we've seen each other two-dimensionally. But when we arrived there, all 2,000 of us, it was this big, like you said, this energy fest, this bundle of energy, this love fest. And with being safe, hug fest, of just, and like I said, I think many of us have felt like these outliers in medicine of we don't quite fit in. Like we believe, in science, and we believe in the Hippocratic Oath, and we want to do good for our patients, but we feel like the system is somewhat broken, and lifestyle, we weren't educated about nutrition in medical school. I mean, maybe a couple of hours, and that was about tube feedings, in the hospital, or the Krebs cycle biochemistry. So some of these really, really fundamental aspects to health we were never educated on. So we gravitated to lifestyle medicine because maybe we saw what was working for ourselves, or we just, had learned that how you move your body, how you sleep, how you eat, how you manage your stress, how you connect this socially, and, how you don't smoke or drink too much. So it was absolutely incredible. And I feel like the camaraderie, when you just have this collective group who really supports each other. And what I've been amazed at is that, the luminaries of lifestyle medicine, our pioneers, if you were to run into them there, they're going to give you a hug and treat you just like one of theirs, because I think that we all want to see lifestyle medicine succeed. We all want to shift the paradigm of how medicine is practiced and delivered. And because of that, whether you've written 10 books, or you're Dean Ornish or T. Colin Campbell, or you're Melissa Sundermann, and I've only been in this space for about 3 years, there's no hierarchy, right? And that is just a breath of fresh air of being, as we were trained in medicine, Lori, and I'm sure you remember, like you start off in those hospital rotations and you've got the shortest of shortest white coat that identifies you as being the peon, like, and then as you become an intern, you finally get your longer coat, but you're still kind of a peon because there's the residents and the senior residents, and then the fellows, and then the attending. So we're very trained and ingrained of this hierarchy of who's most important or smartest. And in lifestyle medicine and the collegiality in our community, it's not like that.
No, exactly. That's funny. The shortcuts. I remember when I did, I was a third year medical student, I was doing a psychiatry rotation.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked into, it was an inpatient psychiatry hospital. And they're like, oh, look, here come the shortcuts. I'll never forget that for the life of me. And then the patients in the hospital always assumed you were a nurse. If as a female, oh, here comes the nurse, here comes nurse. I'm like, I'm not even a nurse. I'm just a medical student. I can't do anything to you other than talk to you. But yeah, no, that's really funny. Yeah, my husband called it, you go to these conferences, it's like, you're just going back to the mothership to get recharged, right? You're just literally, it's a really fun dynamic to be a part of. And we're early adopters. So I feel like because of that, and we've all feel so alone when we go back home, unless we're in a situation like you're in, that we have an opportunity to connect with others and, see them in person. And everyone's always shorter or taller or, different. I love that you said always see each other in 2 dimensions. That was really fun.
Yeah. Well, when I met you, because I'm 5'2", and I've only seen you, and I was like, Lori, you're so tall. And how tall are you?
5'7".
5'7". It's like, look at you, you're tall.
Yeah, and I got that a lot. It's kind of funny. But I really want to get into more of your physical athletic endeavors, which are phenomenal. Can we talk a little bit about that? Like, I mean, you've done Ironmans and Boston marathons, and oh my goodness. So how did that all start, and what does a day look like for you?
Oh man. So how did that start? I have no idea. I actually grew up as a ballet dancer. So my mom owned a ballet school up until she was 75. So it was sort of ingrained in me, and I spent, hours upon hours. I was in ballet company. I absolutely loved it. I'm not built like a ballet dancer. I'm like 5'2" and sort of these muscular legs, which I guess is good for dance, but I was not this lanky sort of, but I loved it. And my mom obviously loved it too. So as a ballet dancer, as a bunhead, kept me out of a lot of trouble because, just ballerina, which is, And so when I went to the University of Michigan, I knew that I wanted to be a doctor. And at least that I thought. So I didn't want to, I chose not to major in dance. And quite frankly, I mean, I was realistic. I was not going to be a professional ballerina. I just wasn't. But I loved it. And so I took at the University of Michigan, they have a wonderful dance department, and I was able to take ballet and got credit for it. So I was like, this is great. I can still take ballet. And during the time, I had a boyfriend in college, and he's like, hey, we should get mountain bikes. I'm like, okay. So I'm kind of like one of these people just in life of like, that sounds like an adventure, and I haven't done that, but I'm willing to try. You know, I might suck at it, but you know, that's okay. So we started mountain biking, and we went out to Moab, and we did a lot of those like famous trails. And back in the day, we now call them duathlons, but they were called fat tire biathlons. So they were mountain biking and running. And this was back in the early 90s, and I had my Trek 950, and it was really cute. It was like blue, and he put like pink tape on it. I loved it. And I show up to these races, and like literally there'd be like two other women there, because it was before mountain biking really took off, and before women really were doing mountain biking. So that was great, because I usually would podium because there'd be like three women there. But I just loved the adventure of it. And I think from my, years of ballet, ballet dancers are athletes, right? I had really strong legs, not so much my upper body, but long, flexibility and strong legs. And I just loved adventures. So then with that same boyfriend at the time, we decided, well, let's do a marathon. I was like, well, okay. Like I had done maybe some 5Ks, 10Ks. I knew nothing about running, other than you just put some shoes on and you go run. So because again, sometimes ignorance is bliss, we decided to sign up for the Chicago Marathon in 1992. Had no clue what we were doing, other than that, okay, well, we probably have to do some kind of training, and then we have to run 26.2 miles. So we did it. I'm sure it wasn't pretty, but we finished. And so I was like, well, that was cool, okay. So check that box, marathons. And then graduated from college, ended up meeting my current husband right now. And it was cute because he played soccer for the University of Michigan. And one of my best friends played soccer on the women's team for University of Michigan. And it was homecoming 2 years after we graduated. We were the token couple that met at a bar. But I was with my friend Lori, and she was talking to my husband, John, and she looks at the two of us and she's like, you guys both mountain bike and you're super outdoorsy. Like, you guys need to call each other. This is before even like cell phones. I think like probably we broke down our numbers on a landline. And so he called me up the next day and he's like, you want to go for a mountain bike ride? I was like, okay. So mountain biking like brought us together. And then, I just sort of fell in love with running. For me, it was just efficient, right? Yeah. That's when I was like starting medical school, and I could just lace up a pair of shoes. If I had a half an hour, if I had 45 minutes, I didn't have to go to a gym. I could just go outside, and there was a lot of freedom in that. And then I found out I really like it. And so I had this goal, because I think I tend to be, like many of us, goal oriented, of like, wow, that sounds really cool. I want to do that. And sometimes it's, I want to respect what these goals are, that the work that it takes to get there. But my goal was to run the Boston Marathon, not only the Boston Marathon, but the 100th anniversary of the Boston Marathon. And that was in 1996. So I was in medical school. I was in my second year of med school. And as you recall, second year is when you take part one of the big boards that we have to take. And so I knew that, or I didn't know it at first, I learned you had to qualify for Boston. And there was a time, so I was 25, 26 at the time. So I needed like a 3-hour, 30-minute marathon. So I was like, okay, so I have to run a race to qualify. So I chose Columbus, Ohio. I knew what I needed to qualify. I ended up qualifying. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to run the 100th anniversary. So then I got really busy with medical school, of studying for those boards and all my exams. And I was like, oh, I think I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to I just want to run it. So this is before we had cell phones. So I got to Boston. It was the 100th anniversary. And I'm from Massachusetts originally. And all of my relatives live in the Boston area. My parents came out, and this was a big deal. Like, here was this ballerina now running like the Boston Marathon, and all my family's out there. So my parents bought me the jacket, the poster, the hat, everything, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay, I got to run this thing now because I like own everything. And I bought a disposable camera because it's before cell phones. And so I was like going to just take pictures the whole way. And because I did not train properly, and Boston is a very hilly course, it's a really tough course. Mile 15, I was like, oh, this is bad. And stretching at every aid station. But again, I was like, I got to finish this thing. And I tend to be a type of person that, for me to give up, it's got to be really, really bad. So it's all those conversations in your head of like, I could quit. My family will still love me. It's going to be okay. No. Okay. You can keep going, but I could quit. No. One more mile. So somehow I got to the end of the finish line. It wasn't pretty. So I got to wear the jacket and I was hooked. Boston Marathon is, for anyone who's done it or who wants to do it, there's nothing like it. And I know we had the bombings in 2014 and I've done it since then, and it's even more special. So that's when I started my running sort of career. Again, it was just recreational pretty much. I didn't work with a coach or anything like that, but I found some best friends through running. And what I found was, what's said on the run stays on the run. And some of my best friends are my running friends, because there's something about running, and when you're running parallel to each other, there's a safety that just, rather than, I love having face-to-face conversation, but as you're out there in nature and you're just chatting, like people, like I've learned life stories just being out on a run. So I've developed these really deep, intimate relationships through running. And if I ever run for president, which I never will, my motto for world peace would be that everyone runs. Because if you're out for a run and you see anyone, right, no matter, ethnicity, socioeconomic, political, we're just a happy group of people. Everyone's waving. And so running for world peace. So, when we were raising kids and busy, running to me was just something I could do, and something that was very healthy from my mental standpoint. I think that it's very much an active meditation for me. A lot of times I run with friends, but a lot of times I run alone, and it's time for me to think. It's time for me to be grounded. I almost always run first thing in the morning. That's just kind of how my life is set up, and that's what works best for me. And so it's a very peaceful time for me to get my day started. Very important. So because I got into running, I thought, well, maybe I'll do a triathlon. And I had a friend at the time who had done triathlon. And I was like, oh, I swam a little bit as a kid, and I can ride a bike because I had my Schwinn banana seat. I can do that too. And did a triathlon. And I was like, well, that was cool. Well, one day I want to do an Ironman, because of course that's like the ultimate goal. And so I was fortunately connected with amazing couple, Karen McKeechee and Lou Kidder. And Lou Kidder has been a coach to some Olympic triathletes and just happened to live in my area. It's not that I was of that level, but I just happened to live in that area. And his wife, Karen McKeechee, who tragically was killed cycling 6 years ago, was a world champion triathlete. She was 8th at Kona in the late 80s. She actually was inducted to the USA Triathlon Hall of Fame because of her accolades. So they took me under their wing. And it was something that I had never, had the opportunity to do. I had never worked with a coach before. They became some of my best friends. They still are today. Karen, rest in peace. But it was a really fun learning experience, a very humble experience, because I learned, I'm not a good swimmer at all. I'm not built like a swimmer. I had to really work at it. But they coached me, and I learned how to do track workouts. I learned how to do cycling workouts with power. And then they got me to the starting line of my first Ironman triathlon. And you do one, and then you're like, can I do a little bit better? So I've done 3. One of them, I was the first amateur female. So that was my claim to fame. And that was really great. It takes a lot of time to train for an Ironman, particularly 100-mile bike rides. So I haven't done an Ironman since 2012. I've done some half Ironman since then, and I don't know, there might be another full Ironman in my forecast. I think that what they used to tell me, because I was always balancing, they didn't have children of their own, and so I was always balancing being a mom, being a doctor, and a pseudo triathlete. And they would tell me, like, there's a season for everything. And right now in life, I feel like my season for my profession and my opportunity is where I'm really grounded. And all those things, I still will always exercise. I still will always be a mom and a wife and a daughter. But I think that your priorities maybe shift. So it was an amazing experience. I learned a lot about myself. I learned about not giving up. I learned about tenacity and perseverance, and met a lot of, the triathlon community was great too. It's just like, you find people with common interests, and wherever you are, and it was wonderful.
That's fabulous. No, I totally get it. Yeah, as the kids have left the house, you have definitely dove deep into the business aspects of all this. I can't imagine doing what I'm doing now with children at home.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel it'd be impossible. I feel this is harder than, medical school and residency are hard, don't get me wrong, but and being in the military, I feel, but this is just, it's a different stretch of my brain.
Absolutely.
But I do want to touch back to, you just kind of mentioned it briefly in 2014. Did you run in the Boston Marathon that had the bombings?
I was not there that year. I had some
Okay.
very close friends that were there. In fact, I was seeing patients at the time, and people know that I've done 10 Boston marathons. So
Right.
a lot of my people thought I would be there. So my phone was in my pocket. I was seeing patients, and it was blowing up. And I'm like, what's going on? Why? And fortunately, all my friends, most of them had already finished. And it's, you can't believe that happens, or
Right.
that happened. But we've come back, and it's Boston strong, and, things are different now. When you get on those, because Boston's a point to point, so they bus you out to Hoppington, which we call Athletes Village. And before, you could bring duffel bags and this and that and check them on the bus. And now it's very regimented. Like, you have a clear bag, you go through metal detectors to get onto the bus. You go through medical detectors getting off the bus to the start line. And everyone's very respectful. In fact, when I did Boston in October, it was canceled in April because of COVID. So this past year, it was in October of 2022. We had to be COVID tested, or we had to show vaccination proof or be COVID tested. And so, again, people were respectful of the policies. This is, we know that the race directors want Boston to happen, and it might be a little bit different than it was in the past, but everyone complied, and they were very efficient. And yeah, so there's some differences now, but it still has the same energy, the palpable energy.
Yeah, I love Boston. It's by far, I think, one of my most favorite cities that I've ever been to. It's just
Absolutely
the coolest place. You
Yeah.
never get a chance. You should definitely put Boston on your bucket list, folks.
For sure. And I'll be back running it again, because in this past, 2 months ago in October, I ran Chicago again. So it was exactly 30 years after my first marathon. And so 1992, Chicago was my first. I came back 30 years later, and it was kind of a crazy time because I had just started working with Canyon Ranch, and I was in the midst of training and traveling to multiple properties, but I managed to qualify again. I will say that as you get older, right? So with the qualifying standards, as you get older, the times get slower. And if you're a female, so if you really want to qualify for Boston, be a middle-aged female.
It's a little bit easier, but still quite an amazing endeavor.
When I used to be able to run and bike and do, things change, right? And I'm in my 50s, and as we know, menopause happens, and sarcopenia, and these things that your body changes. And I look at my fastest marathon at Boston was a 3:04, which is about a 7:03 minute mile pace. And now I'm lucky if I can even do 1 mile at that pace. But I was 41 at the time, and so I wasn't like I was in my 20s, I was in my 40s. And then I don't train like I used to train. My body can't really handle that. And really, my goal is to respect my aging process. but also I am slower, not even might be slower. I am slower, but I want to be able to still have opportunities and still have
Yeah.
adventures. And, I'm still moving forward, albeit, slower pace, but I still have goals
Absolutely.
within my reach. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. No, it's all of it's phenomenal. Yeah, as you hit in your 50s, like it's different than your 40s. I will attest to that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just different. And it's nothing, I mean, it's just the way it is, but you have to pay more attention, I think, to the physical side of things. You can't let things slide and do what you could have done 10 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I'll
just
give you an example. So my husband, he's a consultant and he works with a lot of people who are much younger. So they're in their 30s. Most of them have just starting their families. And so they have a kickball league. And so they asked us to sub. And I'm like, sure, I'll sub for kickball. And, kickball is, they've got the bases. And so I was up to kick and I kicked the ball. I got it. And then I took off sprinting to first base. My hamstrings, like I was like injured for like a couple of weeks after that because like my body cannot go from zero to a sprint like that. It needs time to warm up. I think my body was like, you are not in your 30s anymore. So it was just my brain was like, take off and sprint to first base so you don't get out. But my body was like, we don't do that anymore. I'm sorry. And then as I'm like in the field, I'm seeing like these young, like 20, 30-year-olds being able to do that. And I was like, yeah, not anymore. It's not worth it.
yeah, no, it's yeah, absolutely. But it absolutely doesn't mean you can't do phenomenal things physically. You absolutely can. It's just a little bit different. But what do you eat in a day? Because I remember I warned you before we started. Like I have to make sure I ask this. So I literally make a note to myself. Well, what do
Yeah.
you eat in a day? Because people always ask that to, give you the energy and the tenacity to do everything that you do.
So I will say, and my husband will affirm this, I tend to be a creature of habit. I'm a very habitual person. So it works for me. Like I kind of have the same routines. Like I get up and I run and I do this. So it's not that I'm afraid to try other things. I just kind of know what works for me. And
Yeah.
I tend to just so in the morning, I run first thing in the morning. And I wouldn't say I run fasting because I eat a lot of nuts and seeds. So I'm a big fan of Trader Joe's. If you have one near you, they're great. I get all of my nuts and seeds from Trader Joe's. They have great prices. And so I have this mixture that I love. It's cashews, almonds, and cranberries. And then I mix some raw almonds in there. So I usually have like a couple handfuls of trail mix before I go out for my run because it doesn't feel too heavy and yet gives me some of that energy. And I will say that I snack on nuts a lot during the day. There's always a bag of nuts at work, in my car. And, when I counsel patients, we know that nuts and seeds are so beneficial with the fiber and the omega-3s. And they're calorically dense, right? So for someone who's active, I'm active, I exercise every day. It works as a great snack for me throughout the day. For some of my patients, when I'm counseling that they're really trying to lose weight, because nuts being good for you are very calorically dense, I tend to say you can have that, but it's really hard to just have one serving. So maybe use it as a topper on your salads or things like that, or a little bit of walnuts like in your yogurt, your oatmeal, because it's really easy to have several handfuls. But if you feel like I'm at a weight where I'm, want to maintain, and you're active, then for me, it's been a wonderful snack to always have. And then I like avocado toast. So some Ezekiel bread, some avocado. I always have a Tupperware of tofu scramble in my refrigerator, and I like things that are very simple to prepare. My husband is way more experimental and loves so we're great. Like he loves new recipes. I'm about like what's quick and easy for me. So my tofu scramble that I always keep, and I'll have some of that in the morning. I have some throughout the day. Is I saute and usually no oil, just with water, some red peppers, green peppers, yellow peppers, mushrooms, broccoli, tomatoes, spinach. Saute that. Add in my tofu. I use firm or super firm tofu, crumble it up, And then I add turmeric, which gets a nice yellow color and flavor, and then cumin. And so turmeric and cumin have the anti-inflammatory properties as well. So that there's always a Tupperware of that I can just take it out, put it on Ezekiel bread. I can just eat it plain as my tofu scramble, get my protein in, get my soy. We know that soy is so helpful for men and females, great source of plant protein, but also helps reduce breast cancer risk by 30% and recurrence by 30% in men, 30% reduction in prostate cancer. And then those of us in our 50s with bone health helps our bones as well. Lunch, generally, I always have lots, I bring lots of vegetables to snack on. I love just steamed Brussels sprouts and things like that. Sweet potatoes, I absolutely love. I have my nuts and seeds. I usually have some berries, salads. But sometimes it's just like a Tupperware of just fruits and vegetables. Hummus, I love, bringing hummus. I have a great dip that I make. Again, really easy. It's just 3 super ripe avocados, a can of garbanzo beans that's been drained to get the salt out. Sometimes if you can get no salt added, or you can hydrate your own, squeezed lemon, and then garlic powder, not garlic salt, garlic powder to taste. You mix it up in your Vitamix or your really good blender. And so it's basically like a guac hummus combination. So I bring a Tupperware of that or hummus. And so I'm using that. And then for dinner, I always do a dark leafy green salad. And I'm really spoiled right now because at Canyon Ranch, they have a wonderful salad bar. So it's seasonal. So right now I have a dark leafy green salad with roasted sweet potatoes, roasted cauliflower with turmeric, beets. Beets are wonderful to put on salads with their antioxidants, and ground flaxseed and tomatoes and a little bit of hummus. And then I'll generally have like grilled tofu or grilled tempeh, and then healthy grains that I like to have, and almost like make it a Buddha bowl. Quinoa. Quinoa is pretty much my go-to just because it's got the protein. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I do not practice intermittent fasting. I know that there's some evidence and data to support that. For me, being really active and then exercising first thing in the morning, I feel like that doesn't work for me. And I'm not saying that it won't work for others, but I feel like I need to have something in my body to fuel. So where I found intermittent fasting, sometimes it'd be really helpful. I mean, taking aside the metabolic and the gut microbiome effects that can have, for some of my patients, it helps them with being more mindful. If you've got a certain window of eating, it might be 12 to 8. That means when you're watching TV at 9 o'clock at night and you're kind of bored or you're surfing the web, you're not like, oh, I'm kind of bored and, something crunchy sounds good. So it's helped a lot of my patients in that sense of just being more mindful about, I have a certain window. And then even if I'm bored, later on at night, I'm committed to this. And so I'm just going to follow my window of eating. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. And no one is perfect.
That sounds great. It's simple and easy. Absolutely. And all of those foods, there's so many wonderful things, but I love tofu scrambles too. Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Just you describing that, and then the avocado hummus, and you said a little garlic powder, and some lemon juice, right?
Yeah, and I do sweet potatoes. I have a sweet potato pretty much every day, and I think you've probably seen in clinical practice, like the poor potato has been vilified. I mean, I feel so bad for the potato. When I see someone who's pre-diabetic, they're like, "Don't worry, I'm not eating any potatoes." I was like, well, there's a difference between a sweet potato and a French fry and a potato chip. So sweet potatoes and purple potatoes, as we know, in the blue zones, where people are living the longest, sweet potato in Okinawa, Japan, sweet potatoes are like really like the fabric of their life, right?
Yeah.
So so I support the potato.
Yeah. Oh, I love air fried sweet potatoes. Oh my gosh, they're some of my favorite. Oh goodness. Well, what would be, as we're closing here, as I want to be, mindful of your time here, but what would be the advice that you would give to someone who's maybe really working on trying to implement healthier lifestyles? Like, what have you found works with patients or yourself to really kind of start the healthier lifestyle? Like, where should they start? Where do they even begin?
Yeah, so I think that it's important to assess what we call the readiness for change scale, right? So I'll have some patients that are referred to me because they are pre-diabetic or already developed type 2 diabetes or heart disease. And they're not even aware of lifestyle behaviors and habits that could maybe be not so healthy for them. So introducing this concept of what a healthful dietary pattern looks like, and you and I are aligned with the pillars of lifestyle medicine. We definitely promote a plant-forward dietary pattern. I tend to use that instead of the term vegan because sometimes vegan has a sort of political connotation. And I don't want to be so exclusive that you have to say you have to be 100% plant-based, because I have some patients who do. They dive right in. They want to be black or white. So I think emphasizing more direction to plant-forward, plant-slant. And if that's where they're at, or some people are maybe pre-contemplative, they're like, or contemplative, like, I've heard of this, like, I want to learn more. And so a lot of times in that first consultation, I will give them a list of resources, and I'll kind of say, do you like to watch TV? Like, do you ever watch TV? And people are like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I recommend, I think the documentaries that we have out right now, Forks Over Knives have been out for a while. Game Changers is a newer one. What the Health? They're really well done. And it can really, and I say, grab your husband, grab your kids, because a lot of times when you're making lifestyle changes, to have support with your family, your loved ones, your colleagues, your friends, it can make it easier. You don't have to, but it makes it easier. And just, learn. And so that's kind of where we start. Or I might say, do you ever listen to podcasts? And I give them some podcasts, yours being one of them. And you don't want to be too pushy, because I say, you're an intelligent person, and I'm here to help empower you. And I know you can do this, and I can't do it for you, but I want to help you, and I will provide you the resources and books. So I give them education and tools, and I say, come back and see me in a couple of weeks, and let's what did you think? And a lot of times they're like, wow, that was really interesting. I had no idea. I had no idea that, how I ate, how I exercised, how I slept or how I managed my stress could affect my chronic disease. And, I explained too, I say, it's not that I don't prescribe medications, because I'm a physician. There's definitely a role of medications. But as a lifestyle medicine physician, my goal, the first thing we're going to work on is lifestyle change. And we absolutely, we can prevent chronic disease, and we can possibly reverse chronic disease. And even to introducing that concept, because a lot of people think once I'm diabetic, I'm always diabetic. Once I'm hypertensive, I'm always hypertensive. So introducing that possibility is like, wow. And then also, I see a lot in primary care when we're taking our family history. Patients will say, well, diabetes runs in my family, heart attacks run in my family, and people struggle with their weight. So that's what's going to happen to me. That I've just accepted it. Everyone in my family, is on insulin. And validating that, saying, okay, you know what? You're absolutely right. Genes run in family. But so do recipes and lifestyles. So if, everyone in your family, Kentucky Fried Chicken was served, every Friday night, and activities included going to the movies and getting butter popcorn, that's not so much your genes, that's lifestyles. And the great news is that genes are not your destiny. You have the power. And I believe in you. I think when we, as physicians, if we are constantly writing medication after medication after medication, which I see as Band-Aid, 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 not getting to root cause, it's like we don't have faith in our patients really creating change. And so I sort of flip it and say, like, I know you can do this. Like, if you choose to want to change, I believe in you, and I'm here to help you. So I think that's where we start. And definitely the most important thing is to meet patients where they're at. And I think it's really important to have, we use the SMART goal acronym, right? To be very specific, to be actionable, measurable, attainable. So for some people, it's like, could you, in fact, I just saw a patient last week, he was in his 30s, and he's like, I don't like any vegetables. And I said, well, let's talk about that. Like anything. Well, I think he said, I like broccoli. I'm like, great. Can you
broccoli
do broccoli?
Of all vegetables?
You do broccoli, like, at least 3 times a week. Yeah. Can you pick out a different color? I said, make it like a game. Could you like eat the rainbow, like Roy G. Biv? And his wife was there. She's like, oh my God, we could totally make a chart for you. So it was meeting, you know, and I wasn't going to say like to him, like every single day, you need to have at least, you know, like a huge salad. It's like, that's not going to happen. So it's like, what, you know, he was like, oh, that's kind of fun. Oh, let me think about something purple. So, you know, eggplant. Okay. So it's definitely meeting patients where they're at, small actionable steps, like with exercise. Like, could you, you know, go outside and go for a walk 10 minutes, you know, 3 days a week? And it has to be like, yep, on a, you know, 1 to 10 confidence scale. If you're not at least a 7 or an 8, like we're not, that's too much. Okay. Can you go, you know, just walk to the mailbox and get your mail every day? Yeah, I could do that. So I think that's really important. And, you know, we have 6 official pillars of lifestyle medicine, our food is medicine, movement, sleep, avoidance of risky substances, stress, social connection. My 7th, you know, is daily exposure to outside of nature, to really emphasize that, like as spokes on a wheel, these are all equally important. And at times in life, one might be struggling more than the other, but that we want to emphasize all of them. You know, you could eat the healthiest dietary pattern, but if you're not sleeping, you know, well, and only getting 4 hours of sleep and super high charge and high stress, that's, you're not going to have, you know, a healthy lifestyle. So that's sort of my approach. Yeah.
Well, that is a very comprehensive and doable approach. So I love it. This, you know, are you ready and what are you ready to do, and just get started? Honestly, I feel like once people get started, everything else will fall into place. And one thing that I've really honed in on, I think in the last few years, is just understanding that you don't have to be perfect today. Just reminding, you know, having the patient remind themselves, you don't have to be perfect today. You don't have to have all the answers today, but what is the one thing you can do today to make you one step closer to your goal? And then, and it's okay if you don't know what that is, but there's always something small piece that you can do that, you know, makes you feel better.
Yeah. And I usually use the phrase, don't think about what you're giving up, think about what you're gaining. And then asking my patients, like, what's your why? And if they say, well, I want to get down to 150, I'm like, well, okay, that's fine. But what's the bigger why? Why would you want to do that? Well, I think I'll feel better and my knees won't hurt as much. Well, why? What would that mean? Well, that means that I could maybe like go to the park with my grandkids. I could play with them. Well, what is that? What's that? Well, I'd have fun with my grandkids and have the relationship that I really want to have with them. Okay, there's a why. So let's, you know,
the number can go down
or this, but I think we need to help our, you know, our patients to the why, right?
Yeah, you know, Simon Sinek's Start With Why. That's a great book. It literally is asking why 3 to 5 times, and you'll get down to the scale is just a nice side effect of making these amazing changes in your life. So 100%. Well, again, I want to be respectful of the time, and I really appreciate everything you're doing, Melissa, and everything you've done. I'm super excited to see your journey with Canyon Ranch, and just I'm sure there'll be some amazing stories that come from that, and all your adventures moving into an old farmhouse. And and well, I thought,
right back with you, Lori, because you were more of a pioneer than I was, and you know, I looked so much and still do so much up to you, and have learned a lot over the years from your podcast and your guests. And so thank you for paving the pathway for so many of us, and I'm really grateful to be part of your community.
You know, thank you. I appreciate that. And honestly, it all goes back to a patient and just being curious and diving down the rabbit hole that I literally have yet to emerge. So I just keep going deeper, and then I'll probably dive down in the rabbit hole. It'll be all good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, well, thanks again, everyone, for listening. Please share this. I feel like this is a really good podcast for people to understand the amazing physicians that are available. You know, there's other people out there, but don't give up your search. If you find that you don't have the connection with a doctor or a PA that can really listen to you and lead you down the path of lifestyle changes and lifestyle medicine, keep searching. You know, there's online and you know, check out Canyon Ranch. What is the website for Canyon Ranch, by the way?
Just canyonranch.com. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So canyonranch.com. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If you go to the if you just search my name under there, you'll be able to see me, and my email is easy too. It's just msunderman@canyonranch.com.
Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Before you go though, please hit the subscribe and alert buttons so you don't miss out on any of the amazing content we're working so hard to provide you. We upload a new episode of Health and More with Dr. Lori Marbus every Friday. Now, if you'd rather listen to the podcast, you can find us on all the major platforms such as iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and even Spotify. If you're looking for amazing resources to help you start and sustain a plant-based diet, exercise, recipes, or anything wellness, we got you covered there too. Because at Mora, we actually provide physician-led support groups to help people live happier, healthier lives free of metabolic disease. Don't forget to check out our website at mora.com, and thanks again for watching.